Hey there, history dreamers, tonight. We're heading somewhere hot, heroic, and horrible. Forget chainmail glamour and epic desert duels. We're diving into the actual life of a knight in the army of Saladin. And spoiler alert, it's mostly heat rashes, bad dates, the fruit kind, and sand in places you'll never get clean again. You've seen the paintings. The noble warrior on a majestic steed, shimmering in bronze, righteous under the blazing sun. What haven't you seen? The sunburns, the bowel issues? The moment his camel sat on his helmet. This is not a movie. This is the 12th century Middle East, and you're about to discover why chivalry is wildly overrated when you haven't bathed in 3 weeks and your horse just bit you again. So if you are lying in bed, picturing glorious marches and divine purpose, go ahead and lower those expectations. Grab your driest towel, light a candle that smells vaguely like dust, and get ready to smell imaginary sweat. You're not joining a holy cause. You're joining a logistics nightmare, armed with a very dull sword and a mild heat stroke. Let's ride slowly. Your thighs aren't ready for this. Welcome to the desert population, sand and regret. You wake up choking on heat. Not warmth, not sunshine, heat. Like someone opened an oven inside your skull and invited the sun to sit on your chest. Your mouth is dry, your eyes are stuck. Your blanket is also your only robe, and it smells like every animal that's ever looked at you with pity. Welcome to the desert. Welcome to your new life. You're not just any soldier. You're a knight of Saladin. You trained for glory. You prayed for honor. But what you got was sand in your teeth and a camel snoring directly into your soul. You roll out of your bedroll and immediately regret being alive. The ground is hot, the air is hotter, and someone forgot to tie down the cooking tent last night. So now there's a pot of lentils upside down in the sand, and an entire breakfast worth of chickpeas gently blowing across the dunes, like dusty beads of failure. You squint at the sun and it squints back harder. There's no cloud, there's never a cloud, just blue sky, and the relentless judgment of nature watching you sweat through your armor before you've even strapped it on. Your camp is a scattered miracle of cloth, rope, and people pretending to be organized. Tents flap weakly in the breeze like they've given up. Horses paw the sand, waiting to be disappointed. A man yells about water. Another is arguing with a goat. You can't tell who's winning. Flies are everywhere. They've unionized. One lands on your eyelid and dares you to blink. Simone hands you a flask. It's warm, of course. It's warm. You drink anyway, and the taste is 3 parts metal, 1 part regret. A squire calls your name wrongly, but with such confidence you answer anyway. You're needed probably for guard duty, possibly for marching, possibly for standing in one spot for 5 hours, while your boots slowly melt into your ankles. It doesn't matter. It's always something, and none of it is noble. You were promised purpose, brotherhood, a cause worth sweating for. And technically, it's all here. But the speeches didn't mention the pit latrines, or the scorpions, or the fact that every rock is either a weapon or a seat you're going to regret sitting on. Glory smells like boiled onions and leather in this world. Chivalry is a theory. Survival is the job. You look around. Someone's sword is on fire, not metaphorically, literally. It was left too close to the fire pit, and now it's glowing red, like the last good idea in the camp. The owner is panicking. You shrug, not your sword, not your fire. This is your life now: heat, dust. Instructions were yelled in 3 languages. Sand inside your armor, inside your ears, inside your thoughts. And it's not even mid-morning yet. Welcome to the desert. Welcome to the service. Welcome to the grand, gritty, eye-watering beginning of your noble quest to sweat and survive in equal measure. Let the honor begin. Eventually, probably after lunch, You wake up a knight of Saladin. Congratulations. You're already sweating, you didn't sleep. Not really. You mostly lay there in a half-conscious soup of heat and buzzing insects, listening to the rhythmic snore of your commander and the occasional groan from someone reliving battle trauma or dreaming about figs. When morning arrives, it's less a sunrise and more a sudden awareness that your armpits have started their daily rebellion early. You open your eyes and blink into the brightness. It's not the gentle golden glow you once imagined desert mornings would offer. It's aggressive. It's personal. The sun isn't rising. It's interrogating you. Your body aches, not from combat, from existing. The straw-filled mat under you has shaped itself into a precise topography of every rock underneath. You try to stretch, but discover your knees have decided to file a complaint. Your back cracks like kindling. You're 24. You feel 100. You sit up slowly because standing up too fast results in seeing stars and giving the camp healer something to roll his eyes about. You search for your sandals. They're gone. A stray dog has taken them, or a fellow knight. Hard to tell which. Either way, you slip your feet into something that resembles footwear, but smells like soup. The tent is already an oven. A flap opens and a gust of dust greets you. Like a rude relative, you crawl out and immediately feel the morning wind punch your face with all the gentleness of a training accident. The air smells like sweat, fire, and wet wool. Someone nearby is sharpening a sword with unnecessary enthusiasm. Sparks fly. So does a bit of his thumbnail. He grunts, wraps his hand, and continues like nothing happened. That's the energy here. No time for pain. Only dust and pretending this is normal. Your horse sees you and immediately turns around. You understand. If you were a horse, you'd avoid you too. He's tied near the water trough, sulking in the shade of a cloth that used to be white, but now just looks tired. You pat him. He ignores you. It's mutual. Someone calls your name again. This time, it's urgent. You turn and see your superior gesturing furiously at something. You run toward him and trip, not over a rock, over your belt, which was tied too loosely because you're bloated from last night's lentils. You hit the ground with a noise that will echo in your shame forever. By the time you get up, the moment of urgency has passed. It was a tent collapse. No lives lost. Only pride and a pot of very suspicious rice. You apologize anyway, because that's what knights do. Even when they're more flailing than fearsome, you dust yourself off. Your tunic is soaked through, and it's not even breakfast. You are officially awake, officially armored, officially one misplaced step from becoming the camp story no one stops repeating. You're a knight of Saladin, and you've already lost the morning. Your armor is heavy, and your underwear is a lie. You manage to find your footing barely. You even manage to brush the sand off your pride and nod meaningfully at someone carrying a spear, hoping that counts as looking brave. It doesn't. Now it's time to get dressed. Not in the usual way, not in the I woke up and grabbed my tunic kind of way. Number, you're getting armored, which means you're about to spend 20 minutes wrapping yourself in metal and leather until you can't feel your arms and start forgetting what happiness was. Your armor waits for you like an ex who is aggressive. It gleams in places, it rusts in others. The chest plate still has a dent from that time you tried to joust a tree. The straps are stiff, the buckles are confused, and nothing fits the same way twice. Your squire is nowhere to be found. He claimed a stomach ailment this morning, and you didn't argue because you saw him sneak off with a fruit basket and someone else's flask. So now you're alone, struggling to lift a plate of iron over your shoulders while grunting like a confused goat. You get the breastplate on, kind of. One side hangs lower than the other, but fashion is dead out here, and nobody's taking notes. Next come the greaves. They go on your shins. After some trial and error and one accidental knee slap that nearly dislocated your future, they're on. You breathe. Then you immediately regret it because the leather straps dig into your ribs like jealous cats. You haven't even touched the helmet yet. And then there's the linen, the thing you wear under all of it, supposedly for comfort, supposedly to keep you from chafing your skin off every time you take a step. What they don't tell you is that linen soaks up sweat like betrayal, soaks up trust. It's wet within minutes, it sticks to you like guilt, it rubs in places you never thought fabric could reach. And, once it's damp, it turns your armor into a personal steam chamber of regret. By the time you finish, you're a vision of medieval readiness, or at least you're upright and clicking when you walk. Your shoulders ache. Your thighs are already asking for mercy. You take 3 steps and hear a creak from your elbow that wasn't there yesterday. Someone nearby sneezes, and it echoes off your chest plate like a drum roll, announcing your descent into heat stroke. You look around. Other knights are assembling. Some look majestic. Others look as lost as you feel. One man is still trying to untangle his scabbard from his belt, like it's a snake that insulted his family. The sun climbs higher. Your back begins to sweat. Your vision narrows slightly as the helmet slides over your head, turning your world into a dark echo chamber with the faint scent of salted leather and panic. You're ready, technically. But as you move toward the stables, you hear something pop in your lower back. You ignore it. That's tomorrow's injury today. You're armored sweaty, possibly bleeding internally. But armored, let the chafing begin. Your tent is a hot sock full of sand and strangers. You make it halfway to the stables before realizing your sword is missing. Not in the dramatic someone stole my weapon way. It's under your cot. You left it there last night after attempting to clean it with a damp rag and a prayer, then got distracted by a coughing fit and a debate over whether or not the lentils were cursed. So now you have to go back, which means returning to the place you hoped you could avoid for at least 8 more hours, your tent. Calling it a tent is generous. It's a canvas blister, a fabric trap held together by fraying ropes, optimism, and at least one stake hammered in with a rock that now lives permanently in someone's foot. The outside flaps lazily in the wind, letting in just enough dust to coat your clothes, but never enough air to matter. Inside, it smells like warm leather old bread, and the concentrated sighs of 6 other men who've also given up on privacy. You duck inside, and the heat hits you instantly. It's like stepping into a sock someone wore through a sandstorm and then set beside a fire to ferment. Sweat forms immediately. Your armor creaks. Something crunches under your foot. It might be food. It might be someone's dignity. No one looks up to check. Your sword is right where you left it, wedged between a rolled mat and a dented helmet that hasn't fit anyone since the camel sat on it during training. You reach for the hilt and knock over a jug of water in the process. You stare at it. Everyone stares at it. Water, precious, rare. Now leaking into the dirt floor like divine punishment for your clumsiness. No one says anything, but someone exhales through their nose, and that's worse than yelling. You grab your sword. It's sticky. You don't ask why. You wipe it on your tunic, which only adds another smell to the collection clinging to the fabric. There are no personal corners here. Your space is a triangle between 2 boots and a bag of onions that hasn't been opened since the first week of deployment. Everything is damp. Everything is shared. Someone's sock is on your pillow, and someone else's goat has been in here because your bedroll is hairy and your satchel has chew marks. As you stand to leave, your helmet snags on the tent flap. You stumble, swear under your breath, and trip directly into someone's bed. The man doesn't even flinch. He's either asleep or emotionally absent, possibly both. You untangle yourself, apologize to the wrong person, and duck back out into the blinding sun, sword in hand, ego trailing behind. You're not late somehow, but you've sweated through 2 layers, lost half your water, and now smell like communal despair. The tent sags behind you like it's mourning its purpose, and you wonder briefly what life was like before you shared your socks with 6 grown men and a goat named Abbas. Breakfast, boiled lentils, stale bread, and sand sprinkles. You arrive at the mess tent sweaty, sour, and slightly concussed from your encounter with the tent flap. The line has already formed, a crooked arrangement of slumped shoulders, sunburnt ears, and faces that all say the same thing. I did not survive last night's lentils to be here again. A fly lands on your helmet, and you don't even bother swatting it. Let it have its fun. You're beyond pride. The cook is ladling something from a pot that bubbles like a punishment. The steam rising from it smells faintly of garlic, mostly of fear. It's lentils again. It's always lentils. You shuffle forward, bowl in hand, and hold it out like a prisoner, awaiting judgment. The cook doesn't look at you. He just dumps the ladle's contents into your bowl with the precision of someone who long ago stopped caring about hope or flavor. You thank him out of habit, which feels absurd, but it's too late now. You step aside, grab a piece of something that used to be bread, but now serves as a makeshift weapon, and find a patch of shade that offers no actual relief, but at least makes you feel less judged by the sun. You sit, the lentils are steaming. You stir them with your bread because you don't trust the spoon, which is communal, and once fell into a fire. The mixture is mostly mush, with some pebbles, and contains a single suspicious olive. You eat it anyway. You're not hungry, you're obedient. You take a bite of the bread and immediately regret it. It's like biting a stone wrapped in nostalgia. Your jaw complains. Your teeth consider revolt. You chew slowly, resigned. A breeze kicks up, and with it, a cascade of fine desert sand swirls into your bowl, like seasoning from a vengeful sky. You look at it, consider scooping it out, then don't. What's the point? You're already eating lentils with the consistency of wet regret. A bit of grit won't change the texture. Around you, knights eat in silence. There's no small talk, just the rhythmic sound of chewing, the occasional sigh, and one man who keeps coughing like he's about to summon a curse. Someone burps, no one reacts. This is normal. This is breakfast, the meal of champions, and chronic intestinal distress. You finish half the bowl. You can't do more. The rest you discreetly offer to the ground, where a lizard sniffs it and decides to walk away. Even the wildlife has standards. You rise, dust yourself off, and feel your belt tighten in protest. The bread is expanding and/or possibly fermenting. Either way, you're now slightly heavier and somehow more tired than when you sat down. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which already looks like it's been through 3 battles and a minor flood. You glance at the cook. He's already stirring the next batch. The pot gurgles ominously. Tomorrow's breakfast is plotting. You walk away, bowl in hand, wondering if nobility ever tasted something this tragic. Then you trip over a rock and spill the last spoonful across your shin. It burns. You don't even flinch. This is breakfast. This is war. This is your life now. The sword you sharpen is also your shovel. You limp away from breakfast with a mild lentil burn and a sharp awareness that your intestines are negotiating an early surrender. Somewhere behind you, the cook is yelling at a goat that wandered too close to the food tent and licked the salt block. No one intervenes. That salt block has more flavor than anything served here. You head to the weapons rack because it's that time of day again, the part where you pretend to be a warrior instead of a sleep-deprived walking rash. Your sword waits for you. It's dull, always dull. You don't know why. You haven't fought anyone in days. You haven't dropped it, but somehow, overnight, it loses its edge, as if it's trying to blend in with your personality. You sit on a log, take out the whetstone, and start grinding away with the enthusiasm of a man sanding wood with his teeth. The edge improves, slightly, but the blade still bears the nicks of too many training matches, too many rocks, and that one time you used it to dig a latrine trench, because the camp shovel was mysteriously missing, and the pressure was immediate. You pause, look around. No one is watching, so you spit on the whetstone. It's a trick someone swore by once. Might have been a blacksmith, might have been drunk. You do it anyway. The sword gleams in a few spots. In others, it still appears to have been forged by someone using instructions shouted from across a river. You sigh, keep sharpening, the sun climbs. Your shirt sticks. Your armpits begin to simmer. Somewhere nearby, a camel makes a noise that sounds like it just gave up on life. Then you hear it, your name, shouted with just enough panic to ruin your afternoon. You turn. A boy is running toward you, barefoot and dust-covered, waving a wooden stick and yelling something about the latrine collapsing. You blink. Wait. He repeats it, louder. The trench. The one behind the tent line. The one you helped dig last week with your sword. Because no one could find the actual shovel, that trench. You follow him at a trot. Not because you're eager, but because walking makes it feel more like your fault. When you arrive, there's a crowd and a smell. A deep, lingering, ancestral smell that makes your ancestors sneeze in the afterlife. Someone fell in. Not all the way, just enough to regret everything. His leg is stuck. His pride is gone. You hesitate. Then, like the knight you pretend to be, you use your freshly sharpened sword to cut the ropes tangled around the collapsed edge. It works. Sort of. The man is free. But so is half the contents of the pit. The smell intensifies. You step back. Gag! Someone claps. You're not sure if it's praise or sarcasm. Probably both. You wipe your sword clean on a rag that used to be someone's turban and walk away without looking back. You came to sharpen a blade. You left as a hero of the latrine rescue. Your sword, like your career, is confused and covered in something best left unnamed. Bathing in the desert, hope, dust, and disappointment after the latrine incident, you decide you need a bath. Not a polite rinse or a splash of water behind the ears, but a complete reset of your existence. There are limits to how long a man can smell like cooked lentils and regret, and you've passed them. Your tunic is stiff, your sword smells, your self-worth is buried somewhere beneath the faint crust forming in the creases of your elbows, so you ask around. No one answers, you ask again. Finally, someone points toward a canvas screen near the edge of camp, where a barrel and a promise sit under the unrelenting sun. You approach with cautious optimism. The barrel is there. The water is not. Just a slow drip from a ladle hanging off the side. Like it's mocking you personally, you peer in. At the bottom, 2 inches of murky liquid swirl gently, with what might be sand or residue from a different war, possibly soup. A soap fragment floats on the surface like a lifeboat that gave up. You sigh, look around. No one's watching. You decide this is it, you're committed. You strip down carefully, like you're disarming an ancient bomb. Every buckle, every strap is a new insult to your flexibility. You step behind the screen, naked but far from free. The ground is hot, the air is hotter, the ladle is sticky. You dip it in the barrel and pour the lukewarm water over your shoulder. It hits your skin like a whisper of apology. You shiver. Anyway, not from cold, but from how pathetic it all feels. You try to wash. There's no towel, no soap that functions. You scrub with your hands, trying to dislodge layers of crust and battle smoke. But all you do is shift the grime into new configurations. A breeze kicks up and coats your wet skin with a fresh dusting of camp powder. You're cleaner technically, but now you're also muddy. You look at the ladle. It looks back. This is not what victory smells like. You finish your ritual with one last scoop of water to the face. It stings. Something got in your eye. You blink furiously and hope it wasn't from the barrel's more profound mysteries. You grab your tunic and slap it against your thigh to shake out the bugs. It hits with a wet slap that feels more personal than it should. You dress quickly, one foot hopping over the other, like you're being chased by embarrassment. You step out, freshly damp and instantly dry. A man reborn in dust and lowered expectations. Saladin walks past and nods. You nod back, trying not to look like a feral goat wearing borrowed clothes. You feel marginally better. The kind of clean that comes from effort, not outcome. You didn't bathe. You bargained with the concept of hygiene and walked away with a draw. The sun climbs higher. You squint upward. Maybe tomorrow you'll find a real stream. Perhaps tomorrow the barrel will be complete. Maybe tomorrow won't smell like feet and boiling fabric. You believe in this. Briefly, then you catch another whiff of yourself and decide to believe in something else. Like fire, or exile, or just staying downwind. Your horse hates you. And so does the saddle freshly dusted from your almost bath and still squinting against the sun. You remember your next duty. It involves a horse. Specifically, your horse. You know this because the stable hand spotted you emerging from behind the bathing curtain and immediately shouted your name with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for bad news. You try to look busy, you fail. You're handed a bridle, a crusty rag, and a piece of advice you can't hear over the sound of your own despair. You head toward the stables, which is generous because it's really just a collection of ropes, flies, and horses that have absolutely no intention of cooperating with anyone who smells like lentil soap mud. You approach your horse with cautious optimism. His name is Zafir. It means something noble, probably. He responds like someone who just remembered you. Owe him money. His ears go flat. His tail twitches with menace. You hold out the bridle like a peace offering. He snorts and steps on your foot. You inhale through your nose and try not to swear. It's a delicate negotiation. This whole mounting your beast of burden situation. You pat him gently. He shuffles away. You reach for the saddle and feel your back issue a formal warning. You hoist it up anyway and fling it over his back with the elegance of a collapsing tent. Zafir shifts under the weight. Not because it hurts him, but because he knows it hurts you. The straps are tangled. One is mysteriously missing. The girth belt smells like mildew and vengeance. You adjust. Pull and mutter prayers that probably offend at least 3 gods. The saddle is on. You are proud. Then you try to mount and remember your legs are made of boiled leather and regret. You grab the pommel, swing your leg, and miss. You try again. This time you land. Your body is twisted. Your feet are in the wrong stirrup, and your sword is jabbing you somewhere undignified. You settle into place like a sack of grain tied to a wobbly bench. Zafir shifts again. His message is clear. He hates you. Deeply, possibly forever. The stable hand claps once, and your group begins to ride. Slowly, like a processional for the recently shamed, the saddle creaks. Your thighs burn. Your back reminds you of the latrine rescue and demands revenge. Every step your horse takes feels like someone rearranging your bones with a wooden mallet. Flies orbit your face. You try to look noble. You accidentally sneeze and startle your horse, who lurches sideways into a bush. You emerge scratched, wheezing, and 30 seconds behind everyone else. You ride on, dust in your teeth, sweat under your armor, a growing awareness that this is not the majestic cavalry life promised in storybooks. This is chafing, this is betrayal, this is you, atop a beast that hates your face, bouncing toward a horizon that looks suspiciously like more work. And you still have no idea where the stable hand found that rag, but it smells like onions, and now so do you. That the 12th of March hours of heat, sand, and existential questions, you're still on the horse. Sort of. Your knees stopped functioning 3 dunes ago, and your right foot has gone numb in a way that feels personal. The sun is directly above you now. An enormous burning eye that refuses to blink. Sweat pours from every inch of your body and has formed a small swamp beneath your chest plate. The saddle rubs with cruel precision. Your sword keeps hitting your thigh, like it's trying to warn you of something. But at this point, you no longer care. You've entered the part of the day where your thoughts loop like broken prayers. Is this what dying feels like? Am I still wearing pants? Did I leave the lentil pot too close to the fire again? You blink. A sandfly flies into your eye. You blink harder. Now both eyes are crying. It's fine. You're part of a column now, a great winding line of riders, carts, and men on foot stretching across the desert, like someone spilled warriors across a giant beige tablecloth. The pace is slow, which should be a mercy, but actually makes it worse. Your body rocks gently back and forth. A rhythm that started as calming and has become a cruel lullaby. You almost fall asleep twice. You jolt awake the second time to realize your mouth was open and you've swallowed something winged. You gag. Zafir flicks his tail in what might be a laugh. Samone up front shouts. The line stops. You lean forward, trying to see what caused the disruption, but all you get is a closer view of your horse's neck and the rising steam of his resentment. Murmurs ripple through the group. You hear the word scorpion, then the snake. Then one guy confidently announces it's probably a curse. The captain rides past and gives you a look that suggests whatever's happening, it's your fault by association. You dismount, slowly, carefully. Your legs dangle for a second like noodles, trying to remember how gravity works. When your boots finally touch the sand, your knees buckle. You grab the saddle, pretend you meant to do that, and try to walk. Your thighs scream. Your lower back files another complaint. You wobble to a nearby rock and sit. The rock is hot, so hot you feel your skin trying to back away from itself. But you stay, because standing would mean choosing pain. And right now, sitting in silence while someone pokes a bush with a spear feels like leadership. After 20 minutes, the source of the panic is revealed. Not a snake, not a curse, just someone's cloak caught on a shrub and was mistaken for an omen. You all pretend it's funny. It isn't. The march resumes. You remount. Your joints crack like they're protesting. The column moves on. A slow, groaning beast made of men, who've all questioned their life choices at least 3 times since breakfast. The sun does not care. The horizon does not change. And your saddle now has a dent shaped exactly like your despair. You think you're a warrior. You're mostly just a sweaty shield rack. The march continues. Your bones are now arranged in new, interesting ways that defy all known medical understanding. You're not entirely sure if your spine is still attached. Zafir walks with the steady determination of a creature who knows exactly how much you need him and plans to make you suffer for it. The landscape doesn't change. It's all dust and sky, and the occasional bush that might be dead. or just shy. You pass the time wondering if your sword is rusting in its scabbard, or if that smell is still you. Probably both. You try to sit straighter. You tell yourself you are a knight, a warrior, a blade-wielding force of divine justice. Then you try to unsling your shield for practice, and nearly dislocate your shoulder. It turns out that the leather strap has fused to your sweat-drenched tunic. You tug gently. Nothing. You tug again, and something tears. You're not sure if it's the fabric or your dignity. Either way, the shield stays where it is, and your arm feels like it's been yanked by a mule. With abandonment issues, you give up. Let it hang. You are now officially a mobile rack for weapons you can't reach. The column slows as a messenger arrives. You lean in hoping for news, something to break the monotony. The message is simple. Camp is being set up. You will arrive at dusk. That's 5 hours from now. 5 hours of riding, sweating, fantasizing about cold figs, and wondering why the inside of your helmet smells like wet raisins. The sun begins to lean westward, and your shadow stretches across the sand like a sad reminder of how far you haven't come. The man in front of you has slumped into a perfect replica of emotional collapse. The man behind you is humming a song that loops every 4 notes. You begin to hate him slowly with your whole soul. As the hours crawl by, the shield on your back begins to ache through osmosis. You can feel its weight in your thoughts. You try to adjust it again and succeed only in twisting your belt into a knot that presses directly against your liver. You want to fight something. You want to swing your sword and shout a battle cry. But when you try to lift your arm, it doesn't respond. It just flops forward, as if it too has decided to desert the cause. So you sit, you ride, you bake, you become less of a man and more of a laundry rack for poorly stored equipment and poor decisions. Some unknown calls out that the camp is in sight. You squint. Nothing, just more sand. But others cheer, so you do too weakly, out of peer pressure and survival instinct. You are not a fearsome knight. You are not a champion of the crescent. You are a sagging pile of armor and damp cloth held together by crusted soup and prayer. But you keep going because stopping would require muscles you no longer possess, and because there's no glory in quitting. Only more sand. Night watch, where sleep and sanity go to die. You finally reach camp just as the sun begins to yawn its way below the horizon, bleeding red across a sky that clearly resents you. The horses are unsaddled. The tents rise in awkward angles. Fires sputter to life. And someone's already started shouting about how the lentils taste different tonight, which means you'll probably be hearing about it until morning. You slide off Zephyr like a wet cloak peeling away from regret. Your knees buckle. You stand there for a moment, swaying gently, unsure if you're about to faint or just cry. You choose neither. Instead, you find a log collapse onto it and stare at nothing. This is peace, brief, dusty peace. Then your name is called again, always yours. You look up. The captain's face appears, smugly silhouetted by firelight, holding a list you didn't know existed. You've been assigned to first watch. Of course you have. It's the reward for being alive and slightly conscious. You nod like a brave soldier. Inside, something breaks. You force yourself upright and shuffle toward the edge of camp, where darkness stretches like a sleeping beast, and every sound feels personal. You are given a torch. It flickers in the wind like it wants to die. You are also given a whistle, which is optimistic, considering that if anything happens, you'll most likely swallow it in panic. Your post is near the supply carts. The captain says this with emphasis, as if anyone would want to steal pickled onions and goat harnesses. You stand there, alone, with your squeaky leather boots, your half-burned torch, and the slow, creeping realization that everything around you wants to either bite, sting, or haunt you. The night is cold in that cruel desert way, where the heat escapes fast and leaves you clutching your elbows, wondering why your teeth feel so cold. You shift your weight, the torch drips something hot onto your hand. You curse quietly and stick your fingers into the sand, which feels like fine gravel soaked in a history of disappointment. An owl screeches nearby. You jump, your sword unsheathes half an inch. You tell yourself it's fine. You tell yourself you're a knight. But the torch flickers again, and suddenly a shadow moves across the dunes, like it's late for something ominous. You grip the sword, you squint, you consider calling for help. Then the shadow trips over a tent rope and reveals itself as your fellow knight Farid, who mutters something about bladder emergencies and disappears behind a rock. You sheathe your sword and sigh deeply loudly. No one hears it but the moon. Your shift drags on. Minutes feel like hours. You whisper to your feet. You hum to stay awake. You question every choice you've ever made, especially the one where you volunteered to serve. When someone finally comes to relieve you, you hand them the torch like it's a cursed object and walk back toward camp with the slow, aching shuffle of a man who just stared into the abyss and found it yawning. You collapse into your blanket, not to sleep, just to forget briefly, until your name gets called again. Desert illnesses, heat stroke, fleas, and the plague's cousin, you wake up coughing. Not a delicate, poetic cough, the kind that makes your ribs rattle and your brain knock on your skull, asking if this is how it ends. Your mouth tastes like ash and dry bread. You open your eyes and realize someone's sock is lying on your face. It isn't yours. You fling it off and immediately regret moving. Your spine makes a noise like a scroll being crumpled, and your stomach gurgles in a tone that can only be described as legally threatening. You're not sure if it was the lentils, the water, or your 3 bites of suspicious goat meat 2 nights ago. All you know is your intestines have entered a violent negotiation, and they're not playing fair. You sit up slowly, and every joint complains. Your skin itches everywhere. You scratch your arm, then your neck, then your knee. The itching spreads. It's not subtle, it's not psychological. It's a full-blown rebellion. You look down and spot 3 tiny red bumps near your ankle, and you know exactly what this is. Fleas. Desert fleas. They live in your bedding, your clothes, your hopes. One jumps past your eye like it owns the place. You swat at it and hit your own ear. Dignity is gone. Some unknown nearby sneezes. Not a normal sneeze. A resounding, wet, theatrical sneeze that echoes off the tent walls and makes everyone else shift in their bedrolls. You turn toward the sound and see your tent mate Haroun lying flat on his back, eyes glassy, sweating like he's in confession. He mumbles something about a ringing noise, and then coughs again so hard he nearly rolls off his mat. No one moves to help, not because they don't care, because they don't want to get whatever he's got. Everyone suddenly remembers they have something urgent to do in a different tent. You stand, wobble, stumble outside to find air that somehow manages to be both dry and full of dread, and your head pounds. Your fingers tingle. A fly lands on your lip, and you don't have the strength to swat it. You lean against a post and wonder if you've ever really known comfort, or if that was just a dream from a life where your pillow wasn't stuffed with straw and mild betrayal. Someone walks by and tells you the healer's tent is full. Men lined up like broken tools waiting for repair. The latest theory is that the heat has cooked everyone's insides. Or maybe the water barrels were cursed. Or perhaps this is just what happens when you live in a petri dish made of dust, goat hair, and communal flatbread. You scratch again. You try not to cough. You shuffle back to your spot beside Harun, who is now snoring directly into the side of your foot. You lie down, itchy, mildly feverish, and already accepting your fate. You're not dying exactly. You're just slowly disintegrating in the exact order of least importance, starting with your patience, ending probably with your eyebrows, diplomacy. Try yelling, gestures, and a fruit basket by midday. Your fever has retreated to a quiet simmer, and the fleas have moved on to fresher ankles. You're not better, just functional, which is enough because a captain appears with a rolled parchment and a smile that suggests someone else is about to have a bad day, and he's thrilled it isn't him. You're being sent to help with a diplomatic exchange. The words are spoken slowly, as if you might not understand you do. You just hoped you'd misheard. But no, you, the same man who last week called a camel by the wrong name and started a 3-hour search for a goat that never existed, are now representing your unit in what they call a peaceful gesture of goodwill. The gesture turns out to be a fruit basket. It's woven, lopsided, and filled with whatever passed for edible in the quartermaster's tent. A handful of dates, a few shriveled figs, one apple that looks like it's been through a violent experience. You are told to deliver this basket to a nearby Allied camp, smile, and say nothing. Repeated 3 times, say nothing. You're given a translator. His name is Sami. He walks like a man who spent his entire life regretting volunteer work. His only weapons are sarcasm and a walking stick, which he claims once belonged to a very confused prophet. You mount Zafir, who senses your diplomatic importance, and immediately tries to buck you off. You cling, you curse. Sami pretends not to notice. The Allied camp is a short ride, but long enough for you to second-guess every facial expression you've ever made. By the time you arrive, your tunic is sticking to your back, and the apple has started to leak something you don't trust. Sami announces your presence. You dismount with the grace of a wounded turnip and step forward, holding the basket like a sacred relic and a biohazard at the same time. The receiving officer stares at it, then at you, then at the basket again. Sami says something in a confident tone. The officer responds in a manner that involves excessive eyebrow movement. You begin to sweat harder. You smile. The wrong kind of smile, the kind that says you've forgotten how teeth work. Sami sighs. The officer takes the basket. Then he opens it. Then he holds up the apple, sniffs it, and begins laughing loudly. His entire camp joins in somewhere. Someone claps. You are now the man who delivered the worst fruit basket in diplomatic history. You bow awkwardly, which only makes your helmet slide over your eyes. You trip backwards, Zafir snorts. It's on the way back. Sami finally speaks in your language, he says. At least they didn't throw it. Then he eats one of the dates and spits it out dramatically into the wind. You nod because words are fragile, and diplomacy is just imperfect produce and selective mutism disguised as international strategy. Saladin walks by. You bow, you sweat. You forget your own name. You return to camp a changed man, not by wisdom or valor, but by the knowledge that a diplomatic gift can be so bad it becomes a campfire joke. The fruit basket is now a legend. The apple has its own nickname, and somewhere, someone's carving your likeness into a turnip. You try to disappear. You loiter near the latrines. You hide behind tents. You briefly consider living in the supply cart and starting a new identity as a very anxious sack of barley. But fate, as usual, disagrees. Word spreads that Saladin is making rounds, not in the distant strategic way here, in person, on foot. You hear it first from a boy running past with his sandals in his hands and his eyes wide, like he's just seen a phoenix. Then another knight says it like a prayer, and starts brushing dust off his armor with an energy that suggests he believes elbow grease can erase his past 3 weeks of failure. You freeze. You've never met him, but only heard the stories. Tall, composed, a mind like a blade, and now he's walking through camp where your shirt is still wet from fear and your boots are still recovering from a goat-related incident. You scramble into position, somewhere vaguely official, not too close, not too far, just visible enough to look useful. You stand tall, you pull your shoulders back. Your shield is hanging crookedly, but you leave it. Fixing it would require movement, and movement invites attention. You look straight ahead and focus on your breathing. This lasts 3 seconds before someone beside you whispers that your belt is unbuckled. You glance down, it is. You buckle it too tight. Now you can't breathe. Perfect, then you see him. He walks with no sound, like the ground is too respectful to crunch under him. His robe barely stirs the dust. His face is calm, focused. His gaze skims the camp like he's already memorized it and is just double-checking. When he reaches your row, time forgets how to move. Every soldier straightens. Every sword suddenly looks cleaner. You try not to blink. You try not to sweat. You fail. He nods at someone 2 spots down. The man nods back like he just ascended spiritually. Saladin keeps walking. He reaches your spot. He stops. He looks at you. You bow, too low. You hear a crack. Possibly your back. Possibly your pride. You straighten slowly and meet his eyes for the briefest moment. He nods, just once. Then he moves on, silent and eternal. When he's gone, you exhale so hard your helmet fogs from the inside. No one says anything, but a few glances suggest your bow was dramatic, possibly religious. You don't care. He looked at you. You survived. You were seen. And you only forgot your name for 6 full seconds, a personal record. You walk back to your tent taller, not nobler, just slightly taller. Until the apple rolls out of your bag, you remember exactly who you are, and it's not a hero. Not yet. Sword practice, blisters, bruises, and your friend's elbow in your face. You wake the next morning with a heroic glow still clinging to your memory, faint but persistent. Saladin looked at you, maybe even saw you, perhaps even thought something neutral. You cling to that which felt like a splintered oar in open water. But the morning is not kind. It never is. You are shaken awake by the heel of your tentmate's foot, which lands squarely on your shin while he's chasing a flea with a spoon. You groan. He apologizes. The flea escapes. You limp outside into another too bright morning that smells like horse breath and sour lentils, only to find today is the day for sword practice. Again, you consider pretending to be sick. Then you remember yesterday's diplomatic assignment. You're still infamous. Disappearing now might turn your fruit basket failure into a desert ghost story. So you strap on your sword and drag your body toward the training circle, already hearing the dull thuds of wooden blades and the yelps of men learning painful lessons about footwork and hubris. The instructor is waiting. He is smiling, the kind of smile that suggests he woke up excited to cause suffering. His robe is clean, his boots shine, his arms are crossed, as if he invented war and has no patience for amateurs. He pairs you up with Yusuf, your friend from the tent next door. You've shared water, spoons, and once a particularly dramatic splinter removal. You nod at each other like men who know what's coming and already hate it. The first clash of wood against wood jolts your wrist. You adjust your grip. Yusuf swings again, this time lower, and you parry it with the grace of a startled goat. The instructor shouts something about footwork. You look at your feet. They betray you immediately. You stumble sideways, and Yusuf, trying to help, lunges to block your fall and accidentally drives his elbow into your face. Stars, real ones. You see them. You stagger back, hand over your nose. certain it's broken, dislocated, or somehow inside out. Yusuf gasps. You wave him off with the bloody dignity of a man who knows. This is precisely the sort of moment people will reenact badly for weeks. Practice continues. You fight through watery eyes, bruised pride, and an instructor who keeps yelling, "Faster like speed, will fix your coordination." It doesn't. You swing too high, lose grip, and your sword sails into the air before landing squarely in a bush. You retrieve it. The bush wins. You're bleeding now, but only a little. You tell yourself that's what warriors do. They bleed in weird places. After an hour, the session comes to an end. Your arms ache, your face pulses. Your hands are raw. You and Yusuf walk back to camp in silence, too tired to joke. He offers you half a fig, you take it, you chew slowly. It tastes like dust and disappointment. But it's something you survived, practice barely, and you only hit yourself once. That's improvement. That's progress. That's knighthood. Probably prayer time, dusty knees and spiritual guesswork. Your face still throbs from Yusuf's elbow, and your hands feel like you challenged a cactus to a handshake competition. Sword practice is over, but rest is a lie. The camp bell sounds again, the long, slightly mournful clang. That means it's time for prayer. You groan quietly, wipe sweat from your eyelids, and hobble toward the prayer area with the gait of a man who's seen too much and mostly regrets all of it. Everyone's already gathering, quiet and reverent. You shuffle into line, trying to remember which direction is supposed to be holy and which direction is where you buried your spare socks. You settle on somewhere between the two and hope it averages out. You kneel, the ground is hot and sharp, as if the sand has been taking notes and is now exacting revenge. You shift your knees slightly, only to feel a rock jam itself into your shin, like a divine reminder that comfort is not part of your path. Around you, men murmur, the wind rustles the tents. The sun leans down like it's listening in. You bow your head and try to focus. You begin the prayer. Or at least the version you remember. You've said it 1,000 times, but suddenly your brain empties like it's being tested. The words jumble together. Your mouth moves, but your tongue gets lost halfway through. You skip a few lines, not out of heresy, but out of survival. The man next to you glances over. You nod. He nods. It's an unspoken agreement. Neither of you knows what you're doing, but you're both doing it with conviction. Halfway through, a fly lands on your nose. You try to ignore it, it doesn't leave. You shake your head gently, it moves to your lip. You hold your breath, you swat at it. Too late, your hand slaps your own face with the force of frustration and prayer colliding in real time. Someone coughs behind you. You pretend nothing happened. You continue mumbling, this time with less confidence and more swelling. As the final words are spoken, you lean back on your heels and exhale. There's sand in your teeth, sweat on your neck, and one of your sleeves is now home to a beetle you refuse to acknowledge. The prayer ends. Everyone stands slowly, peacefully, like they've touched something divine. You stand too, but your knees crack so loudly that a bird nearby takes flight. You straighten your back, brush dust from your hands, and immediately smear something sticky across your palm. You decide not to investigate. Some questions have no holy answers. You return to camp calmer, but also itchier, spiritually lighter, but physically damp. You pass Yusuf, who's still chewing that same fig. He raises an eyebrow, you raise both. You've just survived sword practice, spontaneous self-slap theology, and an insect invasion. You're feeling almost enlightened, but mostly just hungry again, which feels very holy in its way. If you die, you get a song, maybe. After prayer, you wander back toward camp with sand in your ears and something vaguely inspirational drifting through your thoughts. You're not sure if it's spiritual clarity or heat stroke, but you let it sit there like a guest. You're not brave enough to question. The tents flap softly in the evening wind. Someone's playing a reed flute near the fire, which sounds beautiful until you realize it's the same two notes repeated over and over, like the instrument itself has memory loss. You pass a group of younger soldiers sitting in a circle, wide-eyed, listening to an older knight tell a story about a man who died in battle and was honored with a song that echoed across the mountains for 3 whole days. You stop walking. You listen. The younger soldiers lean in. The story grows louder. The knight's voice takes on that gravelly, self-important tone people get when they know no one's going to challenge them. He talks about glory, about the way the dead man fell with his blade still raised, how the poets wept while writing the verses, how the song made grown men tremble and horses rear in mourning. Someone asks if the man's name was Yusuf the Tall. The storyteller pauses. Squints says no. It was definitely someone else, he thinks. Maybe he's not sure anymore, but the song was real, definitely real. Maybe. You stand there mildly horrified. You know the truth. If you die, there is no flute, no verse, no weeping horses. There's just a shallow hole, a reused blanket, and a very rushed ceremony involving 3 awkward men and 1 broken shovel. The most you'll get is a half-remembered anecdote told by someone who didn't like you enough to get the details right. Maybe your name, maybe not. Maybe they'll say you were brave. Perhaps they'll tell you they had digestive issues. Either way, you'll be gone, and the camp will still eat lentils. You sit near the fire, staring into the flames, mildly offended by the myth of it all. Yusuf drops beside you, chewing something green and probably stolen. He asks what's wrong. You tell him you don't think you'll get a song. He blinks, chews, then shrugs and says, if you die with your pants still on and no one's goat escapes because of it, that's already better than most. You nod. It's not comforting, but it's not wrong. He says he'll hum something if you go first. You ask if he knows how to hum. He doesn't, but he'll try. It's the thought that counts. The night deepens. The flute continues its 2-note lament. The fire crackles. You lie back in the sand. Helmet still on, limbs aching, soul mildly offended. If you die tomorrow, someone might sing, or they might trip over your grave and curse your name for being in the way. Either is fine. Either is honest. Both are significantly on brand. You're not a hero. You're hot, tired, and slightly on fire. You wake up to the unmistakable scent of burning wool. Not campfire smoke, not incense. Actual wool. Your wool. Specifically your left sleeve. You sit up fast and discover you've rolled too close to the embers during the night, and now smell like a sheep that lost a duel. You slap at the charred fabric, succeed only in fanning the smoke into your own eyes, and stagger upright with the grace of a man who slept on one elbow in dreams full of coughing camels. Around you, the camp stirs, men yawn, someone swears. A rooster that does not belong here screams in the distance, like it's paid to be dramatic. You stumble toward the washing trough and find it empty, save for a pair of socks soaking in what looks like stew. You nod at the owner of the socks. He nods back. Nothing is said. Everything is understood. You splash a bit of water on your face from a ladle someone definitely used to scoop porridge yesterday, and then rub your temples like that will summon the energy to be a functioning human again. It doesn't. You check your gear. Your sword is missing. You panic for 4 seconds before remembering you used it last night to chop firewood, then forgot it beside the latrine, because you got distracted arguing with a beetle about territory you jog over. It's still there. A little sandy, smells faintly of regret. You sheathe it with the quiet understanding that you are not responsible enough to own anything with a blade. You're told there's a training drill at noon. You glance at the sky. It is already noon. The sun glares at you like it knows you're lying to yourself about hydration. You try to prepare. You put on your tunic, which is still slightly smoking. You strap your armor. It squeaks in protest. You grab your helmet, which is full of something that buzzes, and you shake it out without looking. You mount Zafir. He's been waiting. He senses your fragile state and steps sideways as you swing your leg, just enough to remind you who the real warrior is. The drill begins. You are in the second row. You are not sure what you're practicing. A maneuver maybe, or punishment. The orders come loudly and unclearly. You charge. You miss the signal to stop. You nearly decapitate a training dummy that turns out to be a real person holding a jug of water. They scream. You apologize. Your commander sighs into his palms. By sunset, your arms are sore, your shirt has 2 new holes, and your dignity is once again hiding under a pile of someone else's laundry. You sit by the fire, nursing a burn and a bruise. You don't remember earning and accept your place in the world. You are not a hero. You are a hot, tired, slightly scorched man with no song and a horse who pities you. But at least, you're not on latrine duty. Not tonight, probably, hopefully, please. So now you know, you weren't the chosen knight of legend. You were the guy with one boot slightly tighter than the other, a shield that doubled as a dinner plate, and a face that took more hits in practice than in battle. You weren't riding into glory, you were limping into chores. You didn't win wars. You delivered fruit baskets that offended people. You didn't bathe in marble tubs. You scrubbed your armpits with a ladle that smelled like onions and shared your sleeping space with fleas, goats, and a man who chewed figs like they owed him money. Being a knight of Saladin wasn't poetry. It was chafing, blisters, prayer with a side of dust, a saddle that hated you, a sword that bent when you sneezed, and a daily ration of lentils that may or may not have had a face. You didn't chase glory. You chased your horse when it got loose and peed on your armor. But you endured. You marched. You bled a little. You itched a lot. And maybe that's what it really means to be a knight. Thanks for surviving this with us. This was boring history for sleep. And now you may rest like a very tired, slightly burnt knight.